All right, we are back here on the Just End the Suffering podcast, getting ready for the start of the NHL season. The puck is dropping this week. Join me today on my go-to hockey guys on the podcast. Pete Consadori is here. Pete, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. Listen, hockey's coming back. We're already in preseason, right? So, always a great day to talk hockey, and I'm very excited for the season. I'm very excited for this show.
Yeah, second podcast of the week for Pete too. He just did the Sky Guys, and now we're back talking hockey.
I know my lungs are going to give out here. We talk so much.
Yeah, especially the Sky Guys. We tend to go on for a while, but this one I don't think will be as long.
It's okay. Listen, it's hockey. I'm excited to be here. Let's go with it.
Yeah, I mean, the last time we really talked hockey on this podcast, aside from the Islanders bit and when they were in the playoffs, was really us talking about the complete blow up at the front office here. And they hired Chris Drury, the new GM. They hired Gerard Gallant, the new head coach. What do you think about this?
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, the Chris Drury thing, we spoke about it a little bit earlier this year, right, when it happened. I was having this conversation with a colleague actually today about how old players becoming coaches or GMs is a weird dynamic, right? Think about like Chris Drury, if he played with anyone on the Rangers, which I don't think he has because his tenure was, I think, before the current players, especially a lot of the young ones. But like, imagine being the guy who says, I think you deserve this much money, but you played with them like 6 seasons ago. I think that dynamic's weird. Chris Drury also, I think, is not a bad pick to be some sort of front office guy. I just, getting rid of JD and Gordon to me was just stupid. They got so many pieces. They got Panarin to sign with us. I mean, they got so many pieces. I think Dolan was just being Dolan, and now he has his hand on the Rangers because the Knicks are doing okay. And if you want to listen to that podcast that we did a while back, I'm sure Mike, you'll link it in the YouTube.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I mean, it'll be fine. I think Chris Drury is capable. I don't think they need to get rid of JD and Gordon. I think they could have made a bigger standpoint, maybe give them an ultimatum, say to them, hey, listen, your jobs are on the line here. You got to make something happen. I've been waiting too long for the Rangers to do well. They're supposed to be doing well. What's going on? Maybe that conversation did happen behind closed doors, but it just kind of seemed very abrupt because there was no writing on the wall, at least to anyone's knowledge, that JD or Gordon were on the chopping block. When it comes to Gerard Gallant, I'm very excited about his plan. His plan is all about work ethic, right? It's all about, we're going to fight. We're going to roll 3 lines of D, and we're going to fight every single game. Now, I'm not talking about fighting like punching people. I'm talking about, we're going to work for that puck. We're going to be physical. We're going to make sure that the other team knows we're going to be there. We pick up Reeves, and I'm sure we'll talk about it in a second, but we definitely get the grit that we're looking for. I think Gerard Gallant is going to work very well with players that need that leadership, right? So Vegas, when he came in, he brought a bunch of, group of misfits, as they were saying, with chips on their shoulders, saying, no one wanted us. He was that leader to say, hey, let's show them what we could do. You're underestimated right now. Let's show them what we can be. And he did phenomenal. Again, GM didn't think Gerard Gallant was a fit after a few years of going to the playoffs and not winning. I still think it was a successful career in Vegas. I do not take that away from Gerard Gallant at all. I honestly think, the same thing like they did to Flower, Marc-Andre Fleury. I think they got rid of him prematurely, but I'm not the GM. I don't know what happens behind closed doors or with players and players meetings. So, I'm glad to have him as the New York Ranger head coach.
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to it, Gallant. I want to see if we can get them to play less, as a friend of the podcast, Rick Carpinello calls it, less fancy boy hockey and more like straight ahead. They like to go east-west last year a lot. They tried to get the perfect pass of getting pucks on the net. Hopefully that changed under Gallant.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that has been a thing for years under Quinn. I mean, I'm not saying Quinn was preaching that, but I would see games where they're in the power play and they're trying to make the cool pass across that. Like, no, just shoot it. Just get it on net. Let's get production here. Let's get something rolling. Even if it's the garbage goal that comes off the goalie's pads in front of the crease, at least it's a goal. It's a point on the board. So I definitely think that Gerard Gallant's style is going to work for a younger generation of player that's coming in that's new. And I think he's going to allow the older guys to play their game. I don't think that he's going to tamper with them a lot or dampen their skill set. I think he's going to say, okay, listen, you're going to work on you're going to work under my system, but I'm going to let you play too. I'm not going to be on top of you every single time you're not doing something exactly as I want. So I think it's going to be good for the Rangers. I think it's definitely a positive. I hate to see David Quinn go. I think he was a good coach. I just don't think it was working. I don't think it was the right fit. Honestly, I thought Quinn was going to go before Gordon or JD.
Yeah, I also think it's funny you mentioned the term earlier, like in the fighting punching sense, because for the Rangers off season here, it felt like their entire offseason was a reaction to the Tom Wilson fight situation here. And they decided we need to get tougher. And basically every move they made was get tougher. Barclay Goodrow, Ryan Reeves, the trade Buchnevich for Sammy Blaze, and a couple of the other lower tier guys. Like they seems like they went the complete opposite of what they were doing. Is they had all skill and no will. Now they went all will. And like these guys don't really have much skill. So I think it's a weird direction to see the entire offseason based around the overreaction to one incident.
Well, you know what? You know what's funny? I think Barclay Goodrow does bring some skill to that line, and I think Ryan Reeves does as well. And I don't want to say that Ryan Reeves is the best forward out there. Obviously, there's a lot more talented when it comes to ice hockey. But who knows? Maybe under a different kind of playing style, maybe Gerard Gallant will understand, like, hey, we need all four lines producing. He can be the grit, and he can also produce. I mean, Barclay Goodrow, we saw in the playoffs last year. He scored a couple goals in the Stanley Cup finals in the playoffs. I also heard, and we can speculate if this is true or not, that this was not a Tom Wilson thing when it comes to Reeves. Ryan Reeves and Tom Wilson had their spats and that Stanley Cup final back in 2018, I believe it was, when the Capitals went to play the Vegas Golden Knights. That was a big rivalry between just the two of them, Wilson and Reeves. Some people say that, oh, we went and got Reeves because we need to answer to Wilson. I don't think Wilson's living in the Rangers head rent free like everyone is saying. I just think that Dolan was embarrassed when that did happen. I think the team was a little bit embarrassed when that happened. They said, we do need some sort of grit. We have nothing, right? There's a lot of teams that are just skill-based. There's a lot of teams that have both skill and grit. The Capitals being one of those mixed teams. I think the Rangers kind of said, okay, the Tom Wilson incident did happen, but we're not worried about Tom Wilson. We're worried about having guys that can actually play the way Tom Wilson can play. Or we have guys that can play a gritty game, but also maybe produce and help our other lines produce. I don't know if it's an overreaction. I don't think Buchnevich was going to get the money he deserved in New York. So I think the St. Louis trade was very good for Buchnevich. I hated to see him go, but I don't think he was going to get the money that he did in St. Louis. So good for him. But who knows? That Sammy Blais, Goudreau, Reeves line, if they keep them together on a fourth or even third line, who knows? Maybe they do something. Maybe we see, 10 goals out of them this season, 20 goals. Who knows?
Yeah, I hope you're right here. I hope that there's more skill here, because for me, it just looks like they're all getting the same type of player. It's like these physical third, fourth line types who can't produce much offense of their own. And much as you talked about Goudreau last year, look at the line he played on in Tampa. He's not in the same kind of line here at the Rangers.
Right. I mean, look, you can make that argument about Draisaitl and McDavid, right? I mean, it's not the same sort of line. However, if Ryan Reeves is giving Goudreau the space he needs because he's physical, maybe he scores a little bit more. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe that line doesn't produce as much as they do on other teams. But that doesn't mean it's not going to be beneficial to the Rangers. If you're going to rely on your fourth line to do all the scoring for you, you have a problem in lines 1 through 3. And that's not a knock at anyone that's playing on the fourth line in the NHL right now. But I'm perfectly okay with having guys that play a different kind of game on the fourth line and have, like what the Rangers have, 3 lines of guys that will produce. There's no doubt about it. I mean, the only person that you could probably look into those lines and say, I don't know, is Strome. You know what I'm saying? Like everyone else, is going to do something. Maybe even Kreider, because sometimes Kreider gets streaky. But I mean, everyone on those lines are looking fantastic. So I have no problem with using our fourth line for a different style of play.
Yeah, I think also the challenge for them is here. They're interesting with the expectations here, because clearly the owner was on a different mindset than the rest of us, where we said, okay, progress rebuild, said, no, we should make the playoffs. And now they clearly look at this year and say, in their minds at least, like, we should at least contend for the playoffs and probably should get in. Do you agree with that expectation bar here? I feel like, I think it's realistic if you look at some of the young guys taking leaps like Lafreniere and Capo Caco and Vitaly Kravtsov and guys like that. If you're taking leaps forward with some of those guys and the guys who are here do what they're supposed to, you should be right in that mix.
So I agree and I disagree. And let me explain. I agree with everything you're saying. Lafreniere, Capo Caco, Kreider, Panarin, Zibanejad. If everyone's rolling and making, Adam Fox, if everyone's scoring, yes, we should be a playoff team. I don't think people understand what kind of division we're in, though. We have been unfortunate that we have been in probably the best division or the best conference in hockey as of late when it comes to the NHL for the past 10 years. We have to contend with the Islanders, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Washington Capitals. The Philadelphia Flyers have also gotten good. Okay. These are teams that are really, really, really good that are in our division that will push us down to 4th or 5th place in the division. Not to mention the conference when it comes to the wild card, when you have the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Boston Bruins, the Toronto Maple Leafs. You have a lot of different conference and divisional rivals that make it very difficult for a team like the Rangers, even though they're good, to get where they have to be. Now, if the Pittsburgh Penguins take a drop, or if the Flyers take a drop, and the Islanders take a drop, or any of those guys, okay, yeah, I can say there's a realistic expectation. I think the other teams in the division have to be looked at before you can give the expectation to the team at hand. The team that we're talking about is the New York Rangers, a very young team, but also we have veterans on that team that know it takes a lot to get into the playoffs and a lot to win the Stanley Cup final, because some of those guys went to the final in 2014 and lost, and lost against the Kings in overtime in Game 5. So you have to look at the competition to even get there first. I don't know if they're making the playoffs this year only because of the competition. Now we'll see. It doesn't look like the Flyers are in the right direction, in my opinion, but everyone else that I talked about, the Penguins, the Capitals, they're doing just fine. So we need to see how they do this season before we can kind of gauge if the Rangers are going to be an elite team in the division. I don't think the Rangers are better than the Capitals, the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Islanders of the world right now, unfortunately. But I think there is still a possibility they do make it, but we have to look at those other teams.
Yeah, as you also mentioned, we went back to our normal division this year. So Carolina's back in the mix this year. That's a problem.
Carolina as well, right? So it's almost like, if we were thrown into like the Pacific Division, I would say, all right, yeah, we have a chance. But the Metropolitan, even the Atlantic, it's just very difficult. The East, the East is beast. The East is the best conference right now, in my opinion, in the NHL. There's still a lot of great West teams, but the Blackhawks are not what they used to be. The Kings are definitely not what they used to be. The Sharks had a run. They kind of fizzled out. So same thing with the Ducks. The Ducks are not really the way they used to be. So there's a lot of West Coast teams that are good. I just think the East Coast is better right now.
Yeah, let's talk about the team in the division that's probably going to be the best of the New York teams against the Islanders, who've gotten to the conference finals the last couple of years. And they had interesting offseason. They pretty much retained a lot of the key pieces. They made a couple of low-key Lou Lamoriello moves. Lou's been a little cagey on announcing them, but what do you think about what they did?
I don't really have much to say about what they did. I have much to say about 3 defensemen that is going to turn that franchise around and keep going forward. When you look at Pulock, Pelech, and Mayfield, if they keep going the direction that they are, that great defense is going to give that offense a good chance. I have to be honest with you. I'm a little nervous about Barzal. I don't know why. I just have a feeling that he's just not going to produce. I think the weight of being the next John Tavares for the franchise is kind of hitting him. I know he's not the captain, but he's looked at as the biggest player, and he produces. I'm not saying he doesn't have great seasons. I just don't know if he can just keep it up. I don't know if he's like the John Tavares level of player. Wahlstrom is also another player that kind of I'm looking at, right? Wahlstrom was a pick that was pretty high. I think it was like 5 or 6. The Islanders picked them in that draft. And I want to see if he kind of goes off, right? I want to see if he does well. Same thing with Noah Dobson. Noah Dobson went like 5 and then Wahlstrom 6 or something like that. I can have the numbers wrong, but it was one right after another. Those are the guys I'm looking out for. I'll be honest with you. I don't know if it's because we came off a pandemic and we're finally getting back to like a regular season and the transfer to the ESPN deal and everything like that kind of quieted everything. I haven't really seen much news about transactions that are huge, except for like Fleury going to the Chicago Blackhawks. So, yeah. And also the Jack Eichel situation that's still continuing to happen, but it just seems very quiet. Yeah. So I don't have much to say about, their transactions personally, but those are the Islanders that I think we need to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they've gone the route of they basically retain the core and adding some experienced vets who can help win in the playoffs. Like they brought Daniel Chara in, they brought in Zach Parise in, but
so those are 2 big names, but Chara, he's at the end of his career. I mean, I'm not saying that he's not going to be good. He's still a great player, but it's not like Chara when he, left the Bruins for the Washington Capitals, where it was like this big, oh, he's not going to be a Bruin anymore. Like, I don't think Chara is going to make a huge difference when you're talking about Mayfield, Pulak, Pelech. I mean, even Boychuk. I mean, like these are guys that are established with the Islanders franchise that have proven they've been playing well. And I think Chara is at the end. And the same thing about Parisi. I hate to say it. I love Zach Parisi. Even when he was a Devil, I thought he was a really good player. And on the Wild, they're all coming at the end of what their career might be. I'm not really like intrigued by these moves. You know, if he went from the Devils to the Islanders, oh wow, Zach Parise in his prime, he's going to the Islanders. Same thing with like Paul Mary, right? Paul Mary went to the Islanders from the Devils. That was huge, but I don't know. It just doesn't entice me. Yeah.
These guys kind of feel like they're like the NBA ring chase, where they're coming onto a good team to sort of play roles and not be like carrying the load. Yeah,
I mean, with Parisi and Zdeno Chara, I don't know if they'd be role players, because Parisi, he was a skilled player. I mean, he was a lot right about him. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't like it was a Reeves situation where he's labeled as this enforcer, right? But you kind of said it really well. It might be one of those situations where these guys are tenured, so they can pretty much pick whatever team they want to be traded to and tell their GM, hey, like, you have to respect it here. This is where I want to go, and give them a trade list. And, they get the Islanders, or you get picked up and sign a contract with the Islanders if you're a free agent, which I think was with both of them, right? Parisi and Chara, they were free agents. They picked the team. Probably didn't matter about a price tag because they both made their money. It's not like they've been in the league only 2 or 3 years. So I think you hit the nail on the head. I think they were looking for a win.
Yeah, I think also at this team, I think they are still very good. The core is back. They play that style, makes them very dangerous in the playoffs if they get there. I just think if they want to get past that conference final round, which has been where they've ran into the wall the last 2 years, I think Lou needs to find a way to get some more scoring punch here at the trade deadline, because right now I get the cap is tough for them because they had to make some tough choices of who to keep and who to let go, but I don't see if they have enough offense right now to get past these elite teams and dealing with a Tampa again, or dealing with a Carolina, potentially dealing with somebody like Washington. Like, I don't think they have the firepower to get past those guys in a 7-game series.
Well, here's the funny part, right? I'm just going to list some names off the roster. So I have it up here on my computer, right? Yep. Barzal, Villiers, Cizikas, hang on, Nelson, Pajot, Palmieri, and Wahlstrom. Those are your guys. Yeah, those are the ones that you're expecting scoring from. That's a good chunk of your roster. Now, I'm not saying it's everyone. I'm not saying it's like the biggest amount you can have, but like, those names are pretty big names when it comes to scoring, except for maybe Wahlstrom, because he's only been in the league a couple of years, right? Like, John Gabriel Pajot made the Rangers look foolish and stupid in the going to the conference finals, or second round, excuse me. Kyle Palmieri, huge score, right? Beauvillier and Barzal, probably your best forwards right now. Okay. Nelson and Anders Lee. I forgot even Lee. These are a lot of guys that are supposed to be scoring. That's why I think Barzal can't do it all on his own. And just like you said, they need that scoring. They might be suffering from the Barry Trotz curse. I don't know. Barry Trotz had a problem getting past like the second or third round. So he may not be adapting. He may be a little high on his horse where he got and won the Stanley Cup that one year. But don't forget, he was one of those coaches that could not make it past the second round for the longest time.
Yeah.
And Trotz was not going to be rehired in Washington. They only offered him the contract after he won the Stanley Cup. So he was going to be moved. Or he was going to be let go, I should say. So I'm not saying it's the coach, but that's usually the first person to go. So look at Barry Trotz this year. If they don't make it far in the playoffs, see where he goes next season.
Yeah. And let's touch on the Devils quickly. I feel like the Devils are the one team in this area I have never done a podcast on, because they've never been relevant enough to warrant their own episode. But I will say they did get Dougie Hamilton, probably the best value of the offseason in terms of free agent signing here. They have some young guys who could make a move. Apart from that, is there anything to watch for the Devils this year?
So I want to ask you a question. Do you have the number at what Dougie Hamilton signed for?
I'll look that up for you right now in terms of Dougie.
Because in 2021, the 2020-21 season, in 55 games play, he had 42 points. Very, very good, right? Contract season, in my opinion, right? He was looking to move, got a brand new contract. He's playing on a team that has been lackluster. PK Subban is not who he was back when he was in, Nashville or even Montreal, right? He's been kind of on a slow decline since Nashville, in my opinion. Okay. I'm looking at these other defensemen, except for Ryan Graves, nothing is really like popping out to me. So Dougie Hamilton may have that kind of weight on his shoulder he's going to be a top defensive pair, no doubt. I don't know if he succeeds in New Jersey. PK Subban was the same caliber defenseman, in my opinion, when he was in Montreal and the first part of Nashville. Dougie Hamilton is not old, right? He's 28 years old.
Yeah, they gave him 7 for 63.
Right. So 7 for 60. So it's not like his ego is going to be inflated by that. It's a big contract, but it's not like, Jacob Trouba contract or a Panarin contract.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, obviously he's the guy to look out for in Jersey, right? You're also looking for like a Pavel Zacha or a Miles Wood to step up, right? Or
Jack Hughes.
Yeah, going to, right. We have Jack Hughes. Didn't his brother get drafted?
Yeah, by the Devils, I think.
Right. So you have both Hughes brothers. I don't know if the other Hughes is going to be in this season. Probably not, because he's still young, right? But like Nico Hischier, let's stay healthy, right? Jesper Bratt is another name that you hear from, the Devils that has a pretty good career. Just looking through Thomas Tatar, again, I think it's one of those like probably the last team he's going to be on. I hate to say it, even if it's for like a few years. I don't see like I would see the Islanders and the Rangers, right? I don't really see those guys. I'm like, oh, you have this, look out for. It's like a crapshoot to me. And unfortunately, except for like a big name like Hischier, Hamilton, Subban, or Hughes.
Yeah, that's for sure. And the Devils, again, rebuild, working on getting things back in order here. And we'll see if this year they take a step forward. Because again, they're in the Metro like the Rangers and the Islanders are. So it's a very tough road for them.
Right. I do have to mention this, though. The two goalies that'll probably be starting for the Devils is Bernier and Blackwood. Blackwood apparently decided not to get vaccinated. I think there was a story on Instagram recently how he went to go get the shot and he just kind of got up and walked away. Not saying that vaccination status is going to hurt him in the U.S. because I don't know if that's been mandated for the U.S., but it will hurt going to Canada.
Yes.
So if goaltending is going to go to Blackwood and he can't play in Canada and they have not a heavy Canada rotation, but they play Canadian teams in Canada a little bit. If Bernier doesn't kind of show up, you're gonna rely on Wedgwood, Schmidt, or Dawes.
Yeah,
I don't even know who those are. So that might hurt the Devils a little bit too. Is something that is a technicality when it comes to COVID protocol when it comes to Canada, but watch out for that as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is not to the extreme of like Kyrie Irving not getting the shot, not being able to play until 41 games in the Nets, but this is something to watch.
Right. Yeah. It's a what, 7-game, 8-game a season, maybe even a little more. I don't know what the Canada rotations are. Like, I'm sure it's, you play the Winnipeg Jets once in Canada and Winnipeg Jets maybe twice at home or back and forth. But, even if it's 10 games out of 82, it's not a huge amount of number, but that 10 games may make the difference at some time in the future for a wild card position.
Yeah. You also wonder with him also, again, because he said besides the Canada games, like he does give impact. Actually, I don't know if he considered a visiting player for going into New York City, because then you have the Garden potentially where you have to be required to have a shot to go in there. So another thing to think about with the goal situation. Yeah.
I mean,
I don't think he applies, but we're not sure.
Right. I don't know how it works for the players when it comes to U.S. arenas, like if it's per arena, if you have to be vaccinated or not. I would imagine the NHL is smart enough to do a blanket statement for USA and Canada.
Yeah.
Because I haven't, like, when I'm trying to think of who on the Red Wings decided to not get vaccinated and he was going to lose like $400,000 in his salary. Oh man, I can't remember the name. It's a bigger name on the Red Wings, but anyway, he opted out of getting the vaccine. All right. That's your choice. Fine. But he can't play in Canadian games. They didn't say anything about, well, you can't play in US market games that require the vaccine for fans.
Yeah.
It may be a blanket thing for like, if you're in the US and you decide not to get vaccinated, you have to go through testing and everything like that. But if you're going to Canada, you have to be vaccinated.
Yeah. So I can see something like that happening. But let's talk about a couple other things here. We have the Kraken this year. They are here. They have an interesting roster mix up here. We have history with Vegas where we thought they were going to be awful. They ended up going to the Cup final and losing the Capitals. I don't think that's going to happen again here. I don't think Lightning's going to strike twice. But what do you think about the Seattle Kraken team?
You know, I just don't see it happening for Seattle. And it's nothing against the front office of Seattle or their franchise. But Vegas, I think, just had more of a fan base. And I'm not saying Seattle won't, but Vegas was like the perfect place to expand to, because you have so many people that haven't had sports in Vegas finally getting a sport. And like, it's a party town. It's a party city. It's a party, like everything.
Yeah, huge home ice advantage.
It's huge home ice advantage, but also too, like, even if you're not into hockey, you're gonna go to you're gonna go gamble. You want to go to a hockey game since it's here. Like, do you go to Magic shows when you're in New York? No, but I'll go to a Magic show when I'm in Las Vegas because Penn and Teller are there, right? So it's like there is a lot that went around Vegas's success, and I'm not trying to take it away from the coaches, the GMs, the front office, or the players. Those players had a chip on their shoulder. I think with Seattle, it was more of an opportunity and people were ready to go to Seattle, where in Vegas, the players were not ready to be kicked off their own team. And there was more of a chip on their shoulder with Vegas. You ever notice like that was like, oh, they're a bunch of misfits. No one's saying that about the Seattle Kraken because an expansion team already happened. So now it's kind of like, I don't want to say normal, but it's kind of, you know, this is just the way it is. Sorry, I hit the mic. Probably got a pump there. But I feel like a lot of people are like, yeah, we'll go to Seattle to start new. I mean, like, look at Giordano.
Yeah.
I'm sure the Calgary Flames would have protected him if he would have said something.
Yeah.
You know, like, so I think people are using Seattle as a fresh start. I don't think they're going to have that fire and that fan base like Vegas did. Again, no disrespect to the Seattle fan base at all. I'm sure they have very, very passionate fans when it comes to, you know, the Mariners, when it comes to the Seahawks, and they'll also be passionate about their team here in the Kraken. I just think it's a little different.
Yeah, I also think the difference also here, I think that these other teams learned a lot of lessons in the last expansion draft, basically using Las Vegas basically a way to get rid of bad contracts, and they were making trades to arm Vegas all these picks, and they had the ability to go get a Mark Stone their first season and go with a Cup final. I think they learned that, oh, we got to be careful. We can't just load Seattle up. So they were more strategic with their protection. I think that hurt Seattle in the expansion draft.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's, you know, it's the old saying when you have two teams doing the same challenge, right? So like you ever watch like a game show and they're like, you get to pick if you want to go first. No, I don't want to go first. I want to see the other team do it so I can learn from it. Right. So I think they definitely learned from their experience in Vegas, because I think some of the teams got screwed over and they didn't realize that's what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And George McPhee was just an incredible hockey mind when it comes to GM. He was like, okay, we're going to do it this way. And they're not even know what's coming because we have every right to do this. And who's reading up on expansion draft law, quote unquote, for the NHL more than the guys who are working the expansion draft, right? The people picking. So, you know, I think they definitely learned. And look, they got guys like Blackwell, Jordan Eberle. Okay. You know, even if you want to go as far as Brandon Tanev, Jaden Schwartz, they don't have guys that are bad players. Adam Larson, Giordano, Alexiak. These are guys that are definitely really good players. Don't see that kind of fire in them like the Vegas Golden Knights did, though.
Yeah, I guess I agree with that point. Let's do it real quick before we get to the Cup picks here. Any other storylines around the league that interest you right now? Like, give me one or two that you have your eye on besides like the locals.
So the only thing that's interesting is that from all this Jack Eichel talk, Robin Lehner has been very vocal about how Buffalo has handled some stuff. And I wish I had his tweets up right now, but I would definitely go take a look at Robert Lehner's Twitter if you're listening to this podcast. Apparently, and this is, you know, everything I'm seeing from Instagram and stuff, he's been trying to call out some stuff when it comes to the health of the players and how the Buffalo Sabres organization, I don't want to say blew them off, but handled it. So Robin Lehner's been very vocal, especially on Spit and Chicklets, that podcast. So it might be wise to maybe take Jack Eichel's word with a grain of salt, obviously, because it's Jack Eichel and he wants out, and you know he may say anything he wants to try to get a trade or whatever, but might be some sort of truth of kind of forcing people to not take care of themselves. Maybe not. Again, this is all speculation. I'm not saying this is what it is. But the other thing that, you know, is going on in Buffalo is that, you know, Eichel did not pass his physical. He gets stripped of the captaincy. Duh. The guy just said he didn't want to be there. Why would he be the captain of your team? Even if he did pass his physical and you were going to force him to play, why in the world would you keep him as a captain? I don't care how big the name is. If someone says, I don't want to be here, well, how are you going to be a leader? You know? So that's the other story that kind of intrigued me. A big story, Henrik Lundqvist has retired. I don't know if he's going to sign like a one-day contract to retire as a Ranger. It doesn't kind of look like that's happening. Maybe they'll announce it on that date. I think it was January 28th or February 28th.
I think it was January.
So somewhere in there, they're going to be retiring his number. And I think it's pretty cool. I don't know if anyone picked up on this, but I think this is what the Rangers are trying to do. They're going to be doing his retirement of his number when they're playing the Minnesota Wild. And as we all know, Matt Zuccarello was on the Minnesota Wild, a really good friend of Henrik Lundqvist. So I think they planned that out so that when Hank was there getting honored, that Mats would also be a part of that since the Wild are in town.
Yeah, it's definitely a good call. I think in terms of storylines I'm watching here, I think the pressure on the two big dogs in the West in Vegas and Colorado, who had a lot of expectations and not won a cup yet. And I think if they don't get it this year, could see some turnover there. Plus, you have a little bit of is this the last run here for Washington and Pittsburgh? We're both not a lot of winning. Might be on the way down. More so Pittsburgh because of all the injuries that Crosby and Malkin both hurt start the season. I think those are things I'm watching. I
mean, listen, this happens all the time in cycles. Before Crosby and Malkin, the Pittsburgh Penguins were tanking. There was nothing left. I mean, I think there was probably, if I'm remembering the story correctly, there was talks of them being relocated because they're just doing terrible. This is what happens when you have the superstar players on your team and you build around them. When the superstar players, and I'm not saying Crosby, Malkin, Backstrom, and Ovechkin are not producing, but once they start getting older and you start to see the downward decline, GMs are not inclined to make the big risky moves, in my opinion, to start getting other people and mess with salary cap that way. I think GMs of the Capitals and the Penguins are looking and going, okay, we're not going to have Crosby and Malkin forever. We're not going to have Ovechkin and Backstrom forever. We need to make sure we save some salary so that if we do try to make a play for someone, we have the money to pay them. Yeah. And they obviously paid Ovechkin. They're paying Malkin and Crosby. They're not going to go and be overzealous, right? They're not going to go and get a Phil Kessel at his prime. They're not going to go out and get, try to make a play for like a Nathan McKinnon randomly, right? So unfortunately, I think the demise of the team is the GM not making those bold moves to help Crosby and Malkin. Now, remember, goaltending is also very important. Who's goaltending in Pittsburgh and Washington? Like, I don't even know the names because I haven't read up on the new rosters. I have to be honest with you, but I can't imagine they're big time names.
Yeah, I think Tristan Jarry's still in Pittsburgh.
All right, so we have Jarry. So we know that he did have some sort of success, but not the success that Matt Murray did. And Matt Murray was very streaky. I mean, like after that, he just crumbled. And I don't know if that was for personal reasons or whatever, but same thing. Fleury left. Matt Murray took over. You had that run. Fine. Braden Holtby won. He left. Whoever took over it, I forget who they're on now because I think they had a couple different goalies because Grubauer left to go to Colorado. Goaltending's key. If you're not trying to go out and find that good goaltender to keep your team in the game, doesn't matter if you have a Crosby. Look what's happening in Edmonton, right? Mike Smith's still the goalie over there? I would assume so.
Yeah.
Right. I'm not saying Mike Smith is terrible. Mike Smith is not Braden Holtby in his prime or Matt Murray and Fleury in his prime. I'm surprised the Edmonton Oilers haven't been trying to make a play for bigger names. I mean, you have two of the best forwards in the league
under contract.
Why aren't you out there trying to get a big time defenseman? Why aren't you out there talking to Brent Burns or Victor Hedman and going, hey, you want to come win in Edmonton with Connor McDavid? Like, start making some moves. Like, what are you doing? Why are you sitting on the two best players? Yeah, you gave McDavid a lot of money. If McDavid gets more money somewhere else or less money somewhere else and he can win, he's going to go there once his contract's done, or he's going to ask for a trade. And what are you going to do? Say no? It's Connor McDavid. Yeah. You're not going to want to burn that bridge. So I don't know. I don't know what Edmonton's doing, but it just doesn't seem like they're really gung-ho on helping him out.
Yeah, for sure. And let's wrap up here. Let's do some cup picks here. So I'll go first because I'm not the big hockey guy like you are. I like give you the floor to make my pick look bad at the end of this one, but I think I'm going to kind of go a little chalky here in terms of like teams I think that are poised to make a run here and win the cup here. So I'm going to go with a series that the NHL will not be happy about for ratings wise. I'm going to go Colorado and Calgary, and Colorado gets the cup this year. That's my pick. I mean, Colorado and Carolina, not Calgary.
I was going to say, I don't know.
Okay.
If Calgary. I do think Colorado does make it to the cup. I think they're just that close. And I think that they stay healthy. And I think that we're gonna see that they're healthy. If they obviously play their cards right and no one has like a freak accident, God forbid, knock on wood. But there's no other teams in the West that I can confidently say have an advantage over Colorado. Not even the Vegas Golden Knights. I agree with you 100%. In the East, I do think Carolina is a big name. The Panthers are starting to look good. They kind of had a run last year that was very promising. Are they going to go to the Stanley Cup final? Maybe not, but like, don't sleep on the Panthers. Let's see how far they go. I could definitely see Carolina going. I can also kind of see the Boston Bruins maybe making one final run with what they have. You have a lot of guys over there that are taking pay cuts to stay in Boston to try to win. So they can definitely make some midseason changes that could really give them that push. I don't know if any Canadian teams are going to be pushing through here. I think the Toronto Maple Leafs are still going to just choke, unfortunately. Montreal Canadiens, they're good, but can we just talk about, this is actually one of the stories. Can we talk about how Carolina offer sheeted Kasperi Kapanen? Not Kapanen, Kakagami.
That was wild.
Like they just took him. Here's the money you want. And the Montreal Canadiens are like, nah, we're not going to pay that. And just let him go.
Yeah.
I mean, there was some there was some drama when he was a healthy scratch in the first couple of games, I think it was, of the Stanley Cup final or the playoffs. But like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
He's like, he had good numbers, I think, last year. I mean, even in the playoffs, in 19 games, 20 games, he had 8 points. Okay, fine. But he had 20 points for someone who's 21 just coming into the league in 56 games. It's not terrible. Well, who else does Montreal have? Caulfield?
Yeah.
When? That's it.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Give the guy the money for a year. Give him a bridge deal.
Yeah.
Give him something. Carolina trolled them bad.
Yeah.
Trolled them bad.
So on the record, officially, your cup pick is who?
I think Colorado's going to win. I think this is Colorado's year. I think Nathan McKinnon's hungry. I think Landeskog's hungry too. And I think Grubauer is going to have a huge season. So my cup prediction is the Colorado Avalanche finally breaking that seal and winning.
Yeah. Over who in the East?
I'm going to go Carolina as well. I think they're the better team out of everyone in the East. I do think the Bruins could make a play. And I also think the Islanders could make a play if they can just not have the Barry Trotz curse. You know, they're a strong team. I hate to say it as a New York Ranger fan, but they are a strong team. And if they can get all of those guys that I said, right? Wallstrom, Palmieri, Pajot, Nelson, Lee, I mean, even Leo Komarov, Sezikis, Clutterbuck, Bavillier, Barzal, if they can get those guys, Josh Bailey going, that's going to be huge. They're also playing in a brand new arena, UBS Arena. Okay. So they're going to finally have a home after how many years of all that crap with Barclays Center and going back to Nassau Coliseum. Like, they're finally going to have a stadium to go to and say, this is where we're playing all our home games. Might be a huge year for the Islanders. So we shouldn't sleep on them as well.
Yeah, it'll definitely be a fun year, Pete. Thanks all the time. Really appreciate it. For us, you got to follow you on social media, keep up some of the stuff you're up to.
Yeah, on Twitter, PJ Consadori 29, a lot of retweets with the Rangers. Find me there. Just doing a lot of stuff over there. Just a lot of retweets, just keeping you in the know-how.
Absolutely. Follow Pete for your hockey takes. Thanks again, buddy.
Thanks, Mike.